Check, check. Just waiting for this guy to show up here on my screen. All right, there we go. Welcome, guys. This is Mark coming at you guys from TRADEPRO Academy headquarters here in Toronto, Ontario, on today's lovely date, Friday, June the 17th or June the 19th, 2019. Welcome one and welcome all. Trying something new today, doing this thing standing, utilizing the standing desk. So let's go ahead and get started, everybody. If you guys are new, welcome. If you're returning viewers, welcome back. Happy to have you guys on board. So first things first, let me get my charts up here. There we go. Perfect. So there's my charts. Charts are up at the moment. You guys can't see them, but I can see them. And we're just going to cover some of the news that came out this morning after the bell. Nothing really too crazy. We only had a quick speech from FOMC member Bullard at 11:05, and we had the University of Michigan numbers coming out. So let's take a quick overview of that. The July preliminary University of Michigan confidence came in at 98.4 versus 98.8 expected. So a little bit of a miss on that front. Inflation expectations jumped on that. A couple of other squawks that came out during the U.S. session. We had one coming out of China, that China and the U.S. reportedly remain apart on which negotiating text to base trade talks on before resuming discussions. This was from the South China Morning Post. And what else do we have? We had House Leader Pelosi reportedly will not accept the latest White House debt ceiling offer as a starting point for future negotiations. And we also had Trump keeping up with the rhetoric towards the Fed. So, that little squawk coming out of China, the fact that they reportedly remain apart on which negotiating text to base trade talks from, obviously kind of shows that there is a little bit of distance between the two, and that, these trade talks aren't going as well as the market had initially anticipated. And so that's kind of weighing on the markets. We have seen the last couple of days a little bit of weakness coming into the markets, and this looks like it could be a result of that. So that's basically all that we had as far as the news. As far as what is remaining for the end of the session, all I see on the agenda is a speech from FOMC member Rosengren. That's at 4:30 p.m. Eastern. So towards the tail end of today's session. Ideally, I don't really forecast anybody trading into the end of today's session unless you're trying to dig yourself out of a hole. But that being said, Fridays, especially option expiry days, these tend to be a little bit more choppy, a little bit more range bound, a little bit more difficult to trade, especially after, U.S. lunchtime. You've already got the European traders have headed out for the weekend at 11:30 Eastern. And so, they're out of the market. All that you've got left is basically your U.S. traders. And really around this time, your U.S. traders, your traders on Wall Street are headed out to client meetings. They are headed out to the bars, etc., to get a jump on the weekend. So not really expecting too much for the remainder of the session unless we get some sort of tape bomb. But as it stands, that's kind of what we've got on there, and that's all that we've got left for that part of the session. So let's jump onto the charts here, and we'll get you guys a quick reading of the quote board, see what we are seeing. So let's start up here. Crude oil up top. 470,000 contracts on the session so far. Previous day change of minus 0.34%. Our previous day close had to have come in somewhere up top here. My previous day close is hiding. That's okay. But wherever it did close, we are down from there as of this part of the day. Last traded price was 55.2. So again, pretty good volume, just a little bit less than average, but still on average, we've been seeing 5 to 550,000 contracts trading at this part of the day. So that's not too bad. As far as the SPOs are concerned, volume starting to pick up, 760,000 contracts. The last couple of days, last couple of weeks, we've been seeing on average around, 375 to 450,000 by this part of the day. And we're, sitting higher than that at the moment, 763. haven't quite gotten back to the volatility or the volume that we were seeing when this whole U.S.-China trade dispute started to heat up. We were seeing around 1 to 1.4 million contracts traded at this part of the day. However, even though that there is 760,000 contracts, we have seen some direction on today's session. And I'll let you guys know what we're looking for in the room to start the day and what we're looking for to close out the session. So that's what the quote board's telling us. Down on crude, relatively flat on the SPOs, which is basically what it looks like. So, more opportunity on crude oil in these last weeks or so. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at the pivot charts here, guys. So, lower lows, lower highs, that trend continues. Until that trend breaks, we'll likely see further lows traded. You can see overnight, we kind of rallied up into that pivot, held the pivot until what looks to be like the pit open. Yeah, right around the pit open, right around 9:15, this bar down here. We broke back under the pivot. So Globex, a little bit of a run up. You can see we had a little short-term high formed, bounced off of the pivot, couldn't quite get back above that, consolidated. We broke down below the pivot, rotated up, and now we're starting to continue lower. So at this point, 55, your previous day lows coming in at the, what is that? The 54.83s or so. That's where these lows are. That's kind of what we're anticipating as a target here. The fact that we've kind of broken below the pivots. So downside is the right side on that market. On the S&P 500, yesterday we were arguing that this rotation lower was a potential higher low. What we needed to see was a breakout of that 29.90. That's what we kind of got into the latter end of yesterday's session. And we've traded up into the R1 overnight. And you can see here that has acted as pretty good resistance today. We had 1, 2, 3, 4 chances to try to break above, could not do that. And the sellers forced a rotation back to the lower end of the range here. So at the moment, it's kind of neutral, to be quite honest. We did not breach this high up here. So we did not get back above that swing high, but we did get back above this one. So the question now becomes, who's in control, the buyers or the sellers? Well, we're kind of in mixed territory at the moment. Until this swing high goes above those 15s, you can argue that it's a fight. It's a fight at the moment. We'll see what happens if the sellers can force a rotation down to the pivot, these 29.90s. If that resistance that was previously resistance, so that was resistance here, it's broken above. Now on the rotation lower, does it hold as support? Right? That's a role reversal. That is going to help us confirm what side is in control going into next week. If the bulls are able to defend this level, we'll likely get a press back up to the R1, back above 3,000 next week and into those 3020s. If not, if this pivot goes and we get a rotation up where we see the sellers defend it, then we'll likely sink this thing back into those previous days lows below those 75s. That's kind of what we're seeing on the pivot charts. On the actual tick charts, this is what crude oil looks like. So you can see we kind of had that press up. I was arguing that the 56.04, that was the July lows right around that level. And we traded above it during the Globex, right? During Globex session, we traded above it, kind of held it as support, broke below it. And then on the open right here, pit open, we just faded right off of that level, right into those overnight lows. This was a bit of chop, but ultimately we had to press lower, and we were just looking for a run back into the top of structure. That's what we got on that rotation here, and the team was looking to kind of sell that off. So, crude downside has been the right side. We just broke below these 55.30s. And this big yellow line here, that is the 5-day volume point of control. This is where the most amount of volume has happened in the last 5 days. And you can see that did hold as support. We've broken below it, and now we are rotating under it here as potential resistance. So, you can look to press this thing back into these 30s, into that point of control. I can see some bids flashing right down here in the 55s, 55.10s. Ultimately, I'm looking for the sellers to defend this level here and to press this thing lower. So that's really the play on crude. If it gets back above here, you can also look again for another move to the overnight low view app. I'm seeing some offers sitting up there. So if it gets back above point of control, you can look to counter trend, fade it back up there. However, at this point in time, trend is bearish. If you're going to follow the trend, you're going to be looking to short. Where do you want to short from? Structure highs. Structure highs are right up here. That's the play at the moment. So that's crude oil, S&P 500. Here's the level we were talking about. We had the low, the press higher, the rotation back down. We were saying that might be a higher low. What did we need to see? We needed to see the breakout above the 2990s. That's what we were saying. A rotation to find support. That's exactly what happened. We rotated down to the 94s. One rotation up, two rotations. There's your support. And we pressed back up above those highs. Where to? Right into our next zone here, right into there. Kind of had some rotations on the open. We opened right around the overnight high and we sold right off. A little bit of support here around the previous day close and the previous day high. You guys can see kind of sat in there, broke below that range. And again, same thing with crude, just looking for rotations back up into the top of structure, which is what we got here, right into the previous day high, rotated down. And that's kind of the way the market's been going. Shorter term structure has been bearish. You are seeing lower lows, lower highs. We just formed a new low, on micro structure. We did break below the overnight low, did come into the value area low as well. And we did have some bids here in the 92. Those look like the 92 quarters, 92 halves. And we've got a nice little bounce off there. You can see volumes trying to pick up on that front. So this was kind of the level that we were mentioning. A little bit deeper of a pullback is what I'm looking for into these 90s, into the 88s maybe. So at this point, I'm still seeing this as bearish. Just seeing another rotation back up. So right around these view apps, previous day closed around the 303s, somewhere you could look to try another short, since that's kind of been the structure, and your target would be right back into these bids right around the 92s. From there, ultimately, I'm seeing, a press down into these 90s just to see if we can hold this level that was resistance that broke out, seeing if we can hold that as potential support. So even though we are climbing up right now, I am still seeing that as bearish. I'd be wrong if we get back above the previous day close. If we do see that, we'll likely get back towards the open and try to press towards the overnight high. But, as it stands, structure still kind of suggesting downside. And so that's the way that we'd be looking to play it until, the market proves us wrong. So that is basically all that we have today. A little bit shorter than yesterday's update, but short and sweet gets the job done, which is what we're looking to do at the end of the day. So we'll finish this guy off with a look at our TradePro Performance Index. So today's date, the 19th, a little bit of a bounce from yesterday's performance. Team finished up 68.18%. 54.5% of the team were green. 14% were flat, and the remaining 30 were down. So overall, another positive result. A little bit of a tick up in our monthly average, up to 65.89%. Still great numbers. We've got another week and a half or so. Yeah, another week and a half or so of trading in July before August starts to pick up, and we start to edge closer towards that Labor Day weekend when we typically see volume and volatility coming back in the markets. So until then, we'll look to continue strong with the room. Look to keep you guys on the right side. Hello, gone for hello again today. And that is basically it. So a little bit shorter today. Fridays, we tend to kind of sign off around 12. We don't like to stick around too long, especially if the week's been good. It's been a good week for us in the room. It's been a good week for us here in the office as well. And so we're on our end here, we are going to be signing off for the week. But for those of you that will remain trading, you guys know your 3 rules. You want to remain patient, you want to remain diligent, and you want to remain disciplined. Take your profits quickly here. We're not seeing that much directional movement in the markets. So you don't want to hold on to runners too long. You want to take those profits quick and, take the weekend to recover, take some time off, review your journal, optimize what you did this week, what you can improve on next week, and look to come in next week and hit the market strong again. So until then, until Monday, guys, we will be dropping 2 videos on YouTube this weekend. Don't remember what the second one is, but one of them is going to be a really, really good one. So if you guys want to learn more about what it really is like to be a day trader, the truth about day trading, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Not sign up. Subscribe to the channel. Click on the notifications, and you guys will get updated once that goes live. We usually update in the afternoons around 2 to 3 p.m., giving you enough time to kind of do what you got to do in the morning, sit down with a coffee, and absorb some great content. So until then, guys, take care. Good luck and good trading. Ciao.